Good morning. I am really thrilled and honored to be with you this morning. These are bringing together some topics that are near and dear to my heart, and Caitlin and I have been talking about these issues for many years. I have a fond memory of sitting in a restaurant called The Med in Boulder with Chris and Caitlin about 4 years ago, and when PISC was really just a twinkle in their eye, and thinking, wow, I'm so excited that some of the work that I had done had inspired this, but also just like terrified for them at the work ahead. And the amazing thing is I spent the last couple days kind of preparing for these remarks, and I spent a good deal of time on the PSC website. And I just cannot tell you how blown away and impressed I am by the resources, the quality of the substance that's been brought forth to support your industry. And I know we've heard a lot about Caitlin and Chris this morning and the board and the work that's been done, but just speaking from an outsider's perspective, this is a treasure that is available to your industry. And I can't say enough how impressed and how grateful I am to you as leaders for getting this started in the pet industry. We are really proud to be working with the pet industry, PISC, the Pet Sustainability Coalition. Used to be PISC, if anyone didn't know that. They're a really amazing partner of B-Lab. We have a group of partners that you'll see a slide in a little bit that work together to get the word out about measuring and improving your impacts called Measure What Matters Partners. And PSC is one of our really treasured partners because there's so much passion and depth in the way that PSC is using the standards. So I just wanted to say a sincere thanks to Caitlin, and let's just give it up for those two leaders and the board of PSC for an amazing start to this work. So I'm going to ask help from my friend Spencer, who is a tech genius, to figure out why my slides are not showing.
Can you also, I'm going to...
Yeah, can I?
So
Yes, please. It's a little. You want to come up here? Oh, there it is. Yep. Yay! Do I need a clicker?
Yes, you do. Or you're going to have to do it here.
Okay, that's fine. No worries. This is the landing page for all of you who have been on this website. Thanks again to PSC. So by the end of this session, I hope you're going to walk away with a clear vision for how capitalism and your industry and your businesses and you as leaders can be used as a force for good. You're already in this room for that reason. You probably have a good idea already, but hopefully it'll evolve that thinking. And that you'll walk away with the notion of movements. What does it mean to be a part of a movement? And how the pet industry can be a powerful force within the larger business for good movement, but also how you can shape the future of the pet industry directly. And to be excited about what you can do, both as an individual leader and your companies, to forward this movement, your industry, and your businesses. I want to start by stepping back in time and say, once upon a time, there was a species of upright hominids, and they had big brains and opposable thumbs, and eventually they learned how to get themselves out of caves and into villages and how to work together. And that led to one village realizing that the other village had something that they wanted. And so we have suddenly the rising of trade and commerce. Bartering was the beginning of that. So fast forward a couple thousand years and we've got industrial capitalism. Suddenly we had life-enhancing, mass-produced products that were available to almost everyone. Education increased, literacy increased, life expectancy increased, democracy increased, and on and on. It really was this remarkable thing that lifted people and the planet to the next kind of chapter for humanity. A lot of good has come out of capitalism. And yet, we have so many choices now. We have rampant hyper-consumption of products. This is a view that I had of a supermarket in my neighborhood that I took the picture about 3 years ago. And I had this shocking moment one night where I'm walking through the supermarket, picking up usually shop at the natural food stores, had to pick up something that wasn't available in the natural food stores. And I'm standing in this aisle and I'm looking, and I suddenly realized that there is an entire segment of this aisle dedicated just to ranch dressing. There were 24 flavors of ranch dressing. And I thought, why do we have so many choices? This is This can't be good. We have a just incredible amount of depression and anxiety, and it's because we just have so many choices. You wonder sometimes if, capitalism is really good, but do we need this much proliferation? Now, add to that the woes that we all have heard about. I think Chris touched on them, biotoxicity and changing weather events and income inequality and this extinction of species that we haven't seen since the dinosaurs and on and on. It's kind of a depressing picture, no doubt. Add to that a litany of greed and fraud that would make Genghis Khan blush. And then you have the greenwashers. Anybody think of a greenwashing situation in the last year of business news? And unfortunately, it makes it really difficult for consumers to tell the difference between truly good actors and just good marketing. Now, to make matters worse, we have the notion of shareholder primacy. There's some debate out there whether this is reality or not, but in most people's view, by law and by custom, companies are required to maximize shareholder value at the expense of other stakeholders. Now, anybody ever remember first learning about the term externality? I remember having like a mind-blown moment in grad school, and I was like, wait a second, externality, meaning if they do something bad, they don't take responsibility for it, they just kind of put it out there and say that it's external to the rest of the core of our operation. I just could not wrap my head around this. So we have a real issue with this, and how do you get a corporation to think about its other stakeholders in a way that's also by law and common practice? So, any way you look at this is system failure. Whether you are looking at the percentage of wealth owned by a small percentage of the population, or how we have surpassed what we believe is healthy for the planet from a carbon concentration standpoint, or the fact that millennials are not identifying themselves with this great system that we have built that has made life better for humanity. The next generation doesn't identify with it. They're like, I don't get it. It's kind of disturbing. It's kind of doing bad things. So first, we've got to recognize that we've got system failure, and then we need some viable alternatives to fix it. And think about your own system in the pet industry. What systems are working, what systems are failing, and what can your role be as systems change agents? So I want to share with you the work of the B Corp community, because it really has been focused for the last decade on systems change, looking at this whole massive system that has led to some of these bad outcomes, and asking the question, what can we do to fix it? And the basic question is, what can we do? What if we could harness the power of business, which is arguably the most powerful sector on the planet, to solve some of these social and environmental problems that we've kind of brought upon ourselves? What if our founding entrepreneurs understood that they have a broader set of responsibilities, like Yvonne Chenard from Patagonia, than just making money? Making money is good, by the way, but there are other things to be thinking about too. What if our multinational CEOs, like Paul Pullman of Unilever, would have the courage, as Paul did, to challenge some basic assumptions about how business at the multinational level should be done, including saying, hey, I think doing quarterly reporting is driving me to short-termism, and I'm making stupid decisions for my company and the long-term health and viability of all of our stakeholders. So he said, I'm not going to do quarterly reporting anymore. People were shocked. But you know what? You got away with it. And what if our startup entrepreneurs had the gumption to build in stakeholder interest into their legal fabric from the very get-go, the way the founders of Kickstarter did? What if companies competed not just to be the best in the world, which is a great thing to compete to be in a competitive market space? You want to make great products. What if we competed to be the best for the world? There is an amazing shift happening on a global scale right now. People, especially millennials, are wanting to align their investments, their job decisions, their purchases with their values. And we are seeing, at the same time, we're seeing the largest financial shift in history. $40 trillion is going to be passed to millennial consumers over the next 2 decades. And this is they're already 50% of our workforce. Now, if you're not already saying, wow, there's not only an opportunity there, but we better get our house in order to meet the needs and demands of this consumer, then now's the time. So B-Lab, I'm really proud to be able to work with this organization. It's a nonprofit that's serving this global movement of businesses trying to use their business as a force for good. Our vision is that all companies one day will compete to be best for the world, and that society will enjoy more shared and durable prosperity for all. I want to dig in a little bit to how we're doing that, and not because I want you necessarily, I'm not trying to sell the B Corp movement, but because I want you to see how we think about systems change, how we are trying to address a multifaceted problem at a global scale. So you can be thinking at that level, when you think about your role as a pet industry leader and as an industry leader in general, how can you attack this problem in a similarly comprehensive way? One of the most important things we thought we had to do a decade ago was to build a community of credible leaders who were showing that it was it was possible to build a really financially successful, vibrant, prosperous, profitable company while also doing good in the world. And that's the B Corp community, and I'll share a little bit more about that in a bit, and you'll hear from some of the B Corps. In fact, we have 4 B Corps, I think, in the room right now. Badger is a B Corp, Eco Products, if they're here in the room, Westpaw Design, of course, Westpaw, which is now the name, right? Westpaw. And Conscious Company Magazine. Any other B Corps that I've missed? Awesome. These are amazing companies. We also realized that we had to create standards that would make this kind of business practice available to all businesses, not just these leading businesses that have been doing it for 30 years, a la Patagonia or Ben & Jerry's. We also knew we needed to reframe some of the legal conversation. That's why I talked about shareholder primacy. What can we do about that? Well, there's been a new corporate forum passed in 32 states. In short order, within 4 years, we'd have it passed in 32 states. And what do we do to speak with a unified voice about this? What is the brand that we can use to get companies to start speaking across industries and across sectors to enable consumers to go, oh, I get what you're talking about now. This is a good company. It's not just an organic apple, but the company that made that apple or grew that apple, and the people who picked that apple were treated fairly. Okay. So as Caitlin pointed out, we have over 2,000 B Corps in 130 industries, and the unifying goal of this community is to use business as a force for good. These are leaders that are meeting verified, meaning someone looks under the hood after they say things about themselves, higher levels of social and environmental performance, transparency, and accountability. This is just some of the B Corps, the 4 that we mentioned, and these are some of the B Corps that you might know. And the awesome thing to, you as a consumer, when you put your wallet on the table, is to realize that there are companies that meet your values, and you can use the power of your purse with every dollar you spend to support these companies, to help them be successful and to continue their work as leaders and examples. The amazing thing about getting a company or any entity to measure is that they do manage what they see. If you get a company to measure its impacts, how many of you have taken a quick impact assessment? Yeah. When you took it, did it kind of bother you when you saw that you were a little short in some areas? And maybe you thought, that's an area for improvement. We should put that on the list, whether it's a year from now or 5 years from now. We see that in spades. Companies, when they measure their impacts and they can see how they're performing and benchmark against other competitors and other companies, make real changes in how they operate. Badger's a great example. The first example we use is Badger. I didn't make that up. I didn't add that to the slide, by the way. That was already there. So we're really talking about nothing short of the evolution of business, the future of capitalism. We're going from 20th century shareholder-based corporations, which maximize shareholder value, period, to 21st century stakeholder corporations that can walk and chew gum at the same time. Now, this isn't some new, I'm from Boulder, I will admit that, but this is not some newfangled hippie Boulder ideal, right? This goes back to the roots of capitalism. If you think about Henry Ford, who was the original conscious capitalist and the granddaddy of the living wage, he understood that if you treat employees well, you're going to have happier employees, you're going to make better products. He understood that these things work in tandem. So I'm going to skim through these next slides, but just to give you a sense of some of the things that this little nonprofit, along with a group of companies around the world, is doing to kind of change the system. The impact governance, we have Passed it now in 32 states and one country. It's in process in numerous others, this corporate form called the Benefit Corporation. There's now over 3,500 benefit corps. We've passed ERISA reform to enable impact capital to be driven into impact-driven businesses more freely. We have the prioritization of impact investments put into the G8 priorities. Most of the major influential investors are now investing directly and actively seeking out B Corps and benefit corps in terms of how they utilize and mobilize their capital. I'm sure you recognize some of them up there. We have campaigns all around the world called Best For campaigns and other partnerships where we're trying to encourage business networks like PSC to start on the journey to impact measurement and impact improvement. Over 60,000 companies now are using some version of the B Impact Assessment, this tool behind the B Corp movement. And these are just some of the institutions using the B Impact Assessment in some form or another, and obviously PET Sustainability Coalition. I'm using an old logo there, I apologize, Caitlin. We're also really striving to seek this collective voice that we talked about, and I'll share with you, we have tons of press articles, and we started a media platform. We're working closely with other media platforms like Conscious Company Media to tell these amazing stories, like the stories that you're going to hear over the next 2 days. But this is just some of the ways that the brands are showing up in a unified way at point of sale and in all the ways that they communicate with their customers and their consumers. The change, of which we have buttons and stickers available, is what is the way that you are being the change you want to seek in the world. And you'll see this is how they're showing up at some of the retail stores. And not all of our companies, by the way, are direct-to-consumer, consumer product goods, but that's a very powerful way that these companies show up together. So, to sum up, when you look at a problem and dissect it, and you can recognize the system failures, and then you can identify viable alternatives, you start to see real positive impact in the stakeholders that are impacted by those system changes. And before I move on to a different segment of the talk, I thought, this is just stunning to me. I joined the B Corp movement about 8 years ago through my company, GoLight. But last year, an article came out from Fast Company that identified the 20 moments that mattered over the last 20 years. And one of them was the Human Genome Project, one of them was Uber, one was the iPhone, and one was the B Corp movement. And I was like, oh, we've arrived. Now, what the heck is a movement? It's a group of people working together to advance their shared political, social, or artistic ideas or values. Sounds a lot like the folks in this room. The passion that I heard this morning sounds a lot like a movement. So you can think the civil rights movement or the labor movement. We talk about the B Corp movement, but it's also the conscious capitalism movement, the business for good movement, the impact capitalism movement, the shared value movement. All of those parties are kind of in the soup together, working to mobilize the power of business for good. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit and share a little bit about the outdoor industry. You're going to hear a lot more about it from Scott Miller tomorrow when he goes into the Higg Index, but this is where I'm coming from, the industry that I know and love well. So I'll start with a short couple of stories about GoLight. GoLight doesn't exist anymore, tragically. Long story there for another time. Thank you. It was a great labor of love. We loved every minute. Did the typical entrepreneurs 100-hour work weeks and tried our best, gave it the old college try, but beautiful products made for trail hiking, long distance, through hiking, mountaineering, trail running. And we started out with some really responsible business practices, but it wasn't until about 2005 where we recognized there was a lot more work that we could do. And we went on a short vacation. We hadn't been on vacation in the 6 years since we had started the company, and we went, hiked the Oat Route, put it on your bucket list, in Chamonix, from Chamonix to Zermatt, and then we sat on a lawn chair in Tuscany for a week. And during that week, I read this book, Mid-Course Correction by Ray Anderson. How many of you have read that book? Fabulous book for folks starting out on the sustainability journey. It was very seminal for my thinking about how to transform my business. And I came back and we made a radical transformation of the business. We went deep, fast into our supply chain. And we went from 3% environmentally preferred materials. Within a year and a half, we were at 90% environmentally preferred materials in the products that we made by weight. Radical. But like recycled polyesters, recycled nylons, anything that we could do to reduce its environmental footprint. And a whole host of other changes that we made. We did our first GRI report of the A+ level of verification. We became a certified B Corp. It was like we were on our way. And it was so meaningful to our team and to my husband and me to take this path for our company. Now, while I was doing that, I had also made a commitment to serve our industry at the trade association level. I was on the board of the Outdoor Industry Association. I had loved that work. We did a lot of work on protection and preservation of public lands. We did a lot of work on trade negotiations to make it easier for our products to come into the country. And when I became chairman in 2006, there were early meetings, similar to the earliest meetings here in the pet industry, and there were probably 4 or 5 companies. It was Go-Right, Patagonia, MEC, REI, and we were sitting around at different tables and a dirt floor bar at one point, talking about the fact that our industry had this huge halo over it, and people thought we were responsible. Of course, we're making products for the outdoors. They have to be responsibly made, right? That was the assumption, and we all knew that was false, because almost everything that was being made at the time was being made from virgin threads, virgin polyester, meaning coming virtually, within a year out of the ground of petroleum, made into threads, turned into nylon and polyester, and we were pretty dirty actors in reality. And we realized that not only was this a risk to our businesses, because once we got exposed, there would be all kinds of backlash, but it wasn't the right thing to do. We had to figure it out. And that was the very earliest beginning of what became the Outdoor Industry Association Sustainability Working Group. And so by July and August 2010, we had launched what was called the Eco Index. It was launched at the Outdoor Show in Germany and Outdoor Retailer in the United States. And then by 2011, we had forged a partnership with an organization called the Sustainable Apparel Coalition, which you'll hear a lot about tomorrow. And the awesome thing is, and this really says a lot about what's happening in the pet industry right now, thousands of human hours have gone into this decade-long work, shea d'oeuvre. It's a masterpiece in terms of the kind of the quality of substance of the work that's been produced for the textile industry. There's now 150 member companies in the OAA Sustainability Working Group, and I'll show you a slide in a minute that shows you. But the amazing thing is now 50% of the textile supply chain is using the Higg Index that came out of those earliest meetings that happened in a dirt floor bar in Salt Lake City. And because this is something near and dear to your heart, I want to share a really short video with you about this, so you can get a sense of what's possible in the next chapter of this work for the pet industry. There's an awesome article called Taking Social Innovation to Scale. If you haven't read it, it's worth reading, because it's basically the scientific aspect of how a movement goes from just an idea and a desire for social change with specific objectives to something that catalyzes or reaches a tipping point. And the formation of that is these networks that form. You're that network, and you have formed into what has become a community of practice. You have shared values, you're willing to share those values. This is a moment in time, this gathering, Impact Unleashed, the vision behind it is extraordinary, because it really has brought your really well-intentioned network and crafted it and convened it into a community of practice. And that is when you start inviting others into this community of practice, and eventually you will see a tipping point in your industry. I want to wrap with just an encouragement to you. You are the leaders of your industry. You are the vanguard. You are leaders of industry. And the onus is on you, is on us, to be the change we seek in the world, to create this prosperous future for ourselves, for our children, our grandchildren, and our pets. And I know you can do it. So thank you for having me today.